Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. It's Hogmanay, the last day of the year. So what better way to end the year in the company of Alison, McConnell, and we're going to pick out our sporting football Celtic highlights of the year. Alison, what do you say to that?
Yeah, let's hear them, Tony. Sounds intriguing.
Well, I written a piece on the Celtic Way this morning, and the highlight of my year actually came 6 days before Christmas with Kyogo's second goal in the cup final, which turned out to be the winner. It just felt so different. As I said in the piece, that cup finals come and go, but I think that one will linger long in the memory. It really will, because of everything that happened with the new manager coming in June, and assembling a team that's capable of winning trophies again within 6 months. And I just think there was something different about that one. If the truth be told, and just the fact that he brought Kyogo to the club, and that scene where the two of them were embracing and he was hugging him like a child, like his son at the end, just everything that fed into that. And I just thought it was a glorious moment in sport, Alison. That's mine.
Yeah, I think what you would have to say is that this year, I think there haven't been too many highlights.
Yes,
I think, I think losing the league title with 25 points, I think it was the first time that Celtic ended a season with no silverware since maybe 2009, 2010. So you're talking over a decade. I think it was a very turbulent few months that led up to Ange Postecoglou's appointment. I think there has been a restoration of calm after the chaos of that. I think you can see that there are different kind of foundations, more solid foundations around the club. He I think has quite a holistic approach to the job that he's taken over. But I think if you were to ask me about a special moment or a moment that I think maybe just got your bum off a seat or was something to applaud, I think I'd probably go for the Europa League goal, where Jota's pass, I think a good 50, 60-yard pass, picked out Kyogo, and I think it was recognised by the tournament organisers. I think it won an award. I thought that was a special moment in terms of the combination of two players that I think have probably helped to lift Celtic out of the doldrums a bit over the past few months and just restore a bit of confidence and a bit of belief to the team.
Yep, I agree with that, Alison. That was a cracking goal, and you say it was a out the chair moment, wasn't it? The kind of football that Ange had promised, that he wanted to get supporters up on their feet. I totally agree with that. Some comments here. Frank Brennan comes in and says, "Morning, Frank. How you doing, regular contributor? For me, it has to be our 20th League Cup final win a couple of weeks back, simply because we lost all three of last season's trophies with hardly a whimper. And so Kyogo's double showed we're back." Sned67 says, "Morning, Kyogo's goals in the final." Stephen Creamer says, "Quite simply, it's having Ange here." Excuse me. He's been a breath of fresh air after all the nonsense of last year. How he deals with the fans and the media has been great. That's a fair point, just Ange's presence. Alison, it's just kind of, as you say, he's restored calm and assurance, and with that holistic approach that you touched upon there, it's I think the Celtic supporters who were maybe sceptical initially have really warmed to him now, eh?
Yeah, I think he's a good fit for Celtic to start off with. I think that very first day he came in and he brought a clear philosophy of how he wants to play, how he likes his football to be played, and I think that philosophy would be in keeping very much with the identity of Celtic as a club. And I also think his background, he spoke very well and very articulately about his own immigrant background in Australia and the kind of influence of his father. And I think it was a story that lots of people could probably identify with in terms of the kind of gruff image of an old school dad and the common bond being football and European football. And he didn't over egg anything in terms of Celtic. He didn't come and try and suggest that he'd grown up on the other side of the world loving the green and white hoops or anything like that. I thought he came across as very genuine from the off, and I think that's important because I think at a club like Celtic, I think you can get a whiff of nonsense from a mile away. So I thought he came across as genuine, whilst offering a certain kind of football philosophy that I think Celtic fans identified immediately with. But even in saying that, I think that may have bought a bit of credit initially, but I think until you see performances on the pitch, I think ultimately, judgment is reserved. And I think that night at Tynecastle when Celtic lost against Hearts on the opening evening of the season, I think there might have been a few grumbles and a fair bit of uncertainty and disappointment again. But I think he's dispelled that with the way he has played football, the kind of policy that you have seen in glimpses. I think he's been hindered by the loss of players. I don't think you could argue with that over the last 6 weeks or so. I think losing key players with the way he wishes to play, I think has been a handicap. But I think overall there's a confidence in what he wants to do and a confidence that he is the right man to deliver it.
Yeah, there was no that Celtic were his Subbuteo team, or I listened to them in the World Service and all that, Alison, none of that paper,
Yeah, exactly. And I actually think that's quite important, that you don't come with this disingenuine way of trying to buy favour and trying to buy the affections by really over-egging the pudding. And I think when that does happen, I think you can feel people cringing from it. So I thought, I thought he came across as genuine, and I think that's probably the most important first impression that you can make.
Yeah. Charlie McGarvey comes in, happy new year, folks, keep flying the flag, we will do. And CP, love the picture of Ange hugging Kyogo. Tim on comes in, regular contributor. Thank you, Tim. Morning, folks. Highlight for me is getting your dignity and competitive edge back after the shambles last year. Patrick Harrell comes in with this one. Got Anthony Ralston's last minute winner in Dingwall. A few people having their say here. And Pedro comes in and says, bang on, it was special and confirms Kyogo's signing. Pedro comes back in, cometh there, cometh the man. Yep, indeed. And Brian Roberts says, 2Cs I want to hear for next year. Cove getting beaten, Celtic back to where they belong. I think that's what most Celtic fans want to hear, Alison. But as you say, a lot of cheer has been in short supply for Celtic in 2021, so it's just good to end the year on a more positive note, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's been a very difficult year for so many reasons and for so many people too. I think we went into the year on the back of a fresh lockdown and schools off and everything again, and the difficulties that brings, and then we see out a year with football brought to a premature end for the winter break, and uncertainty really over whether or not we'll have full stadia again at the turn of the year. So I think it does feel unsettled generally. I think from a football point of view, I think this time last year, I think Celtic were still very much in touching distance, and then you had the ill-timed trip to Dubai and everything just unravelled after that. Come back with 13 positive cases and a draw against Hibs the next night, and all of a sudden things just really very, very quickly disintegrated, and the acrimony and the uncertainty in a football sense was very sobering, I'm sure, for a lot of Celtic fans to watch, given the success really and the dominance of the last decade. And I think this summer it was always going to be a case of trying to rebuild. And I did think that Ange Postecoglou inherited the spine and the nucleus of a decent squad. But what you have to remember too is that he had to cope immediately with key players leaving: Christopher Ajer, Odsonne Edouard, Ryan Christie, all leaving and wanting to head out and go elsewhere. So I think just getting the club back on to a very firm footing and just reducing the acrimony between fans and the club and some of the things that you saw last year, I think is important, and I appreciate that there's still elements of that linger. But by and large, if you're winning football games and you put a successful team out on the pitch, that becomes very secondary.
Now, CP agrees with both you and me, Alison. Says, I remember the goal in Europe with that pass from Jota was the best I've ever seen. But Kyogo's second goal in the final, there you go. Edging his bets there. David Braddock comes in, morning. David is regular contributor as well. All credit to Ange, he's done it all himself. What a man he is. Who, yes. A lot of Celtic fans are asking the same question. Let's see what else where we are. CH3113 says, highlight has to be going back to paradise after so long away. The joy of walking up the stairs, the part coming interview, best feeling ever. Yeah, that's a good one as well. I think a lot of people felt that they might not get back, and they just showed how much they missed their football during that time, Alison. And they're going to miss it again before hopefully we can resume in 3 weeks' time?
Yeah, I think that's probably an important point. I think for so many people going to games and seeing the same people at games and the social element that comes from it, I think it's a big part of the working week and a big part of the week for so many people. I think it was a loss, and I think it is a loss again now. I think it's very difficult when that's your routine to have it taken away from you, and I think we can all see just how soulless an experience it is to watch a game on a laptop with a laggy feed or watch it from a distance and not be able to feel as though you're part of something else, which I think is a real element of being a football fan, is that you feel as though you're part of something that's maybe bigger than yourself, that you're part of a community, that you're part of a common cause, if you want. So I think when that's removed, I think it can be very difficult for people. I think I don't think you should minimise the effect in that. I think and also people pay a lot of money for their season tickets. I think to have that reduced without a reduction in financial fees, but have the experience so vastly reduced, I think was difficult.
Yep. And Daniel Hughes comes in and says it's remarkable that we seem to be getting our business done early ahead of the window opening, and Ange we trust. And then Pedro comes back in and says Ange brings experience and credibility. He's a real deal. The Japanese players trust him. He's a big reason they're heading our way. Yeah, it seems to be that all three seems to be green for go on all three Japanese players coming to Celtic. Alison, the reports and the news seems to be good, but we seem to have been talking about that for months and months and months now. And hopefully...
Yeah, I think a point on that is that if you go back to the summer and you go back to the first transfer window, I think that you got a hint of frustration from the manager at one point when he said, and I am paraphrasing here because I don't have the quote to hand, but he said something along the lines of we need to be quicker at getting deals over the line. And
I think he also said maybe I wasn't forceful enough.
Yeah, I think if you think, like Kyogo might have been in a bit earlier, which might have helped with other things. And I just wonder if that, or how much that has had an influence going into this window. I think we also have a new chief exec in place. I think I've been impressed in any dealings I've had with Michael Nicholson, and they have always been from afar. But any dealings, I thought he's articulate. I think he's very capable. He's a young chief executive when you consider the magnitude of the role. And I think it is very much a learning experience for him. He will be trying his best to take the lead off the manager and maybe from those around him. But I thought it was very interesting that it looked as though deals were getting done in the opening stages of the window, when traditionally what we have seen, particularly in the winter window, is a scramble around the last 24 to 48 hours. I think it does feel like a fresh broom has gone through the club. And again, I think it's a fairly obvious connection when you see the Japanese players that have been linked with Celtic that look imminent in their arrival. I think the manager's worked in the J-League. He has spoken before about wanting to utilise his knowledge of there and bring players in who he knows and knows how they'll fit into his system. So I think there's been a very clear line of communication between both parties, and what you're seeing then is the fruits of that conversation.
Gio Patrick comes in and says, how exciting is it to know we are going to strengthen? Exciting times ahead for Celtic. I think that's a fair comment as well. Here's one for the two of us. Alison from CP. Do the panel think we will sign Jota? Do you think we will sign Jota?
In this window, I don't think there's a chance he'll sign in this window. And I had this conversation with Sean the other day too. I think Celtic would, from their perspective, I think they would be hugely encouraged by the fee that they've agreed and the performances that they've seen so far. But I think the player himself will be advised to hang on and wait until the end of the season and assess what options he has. I don't think he will commit to any club at this point in time. I think he'll want a good season and then maybe see where it goes from there. What I would say is that sometimes it might just come down to feeling wanted at a club, to feeling settled. He's had a fairly nomadic last few years. He may just feel like he's found a home in Celtic, and there's a very obvious business plan at Celtic. If you come, you play well, you impress, there's a season or maybe 2 seasons or so, and then there is a pathway of progression to a higher league if that's what you want. So I think it's interesting. I think Celtic would be keen to probably do business now. I think the player will be keen to hold off and just see what else is on the table come the end of the season.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. That's kind of my thoughts on it as well. And having spoken to a couple of agents that told me how these kind of option to buy deals work, I think they were saying as well that that's probably the way it will pan out. So now we'll end with this, Alison, on Hugman, Daniel Hughes. Ange will continue to make our house big and beautiful, but the board have to deliver. It's kind of what we've been saying, isn't it? And I think that's a kind of positive note that the Celtic supporters want to take into the new year. And wherever you are in Hugman, I hope you have a good one when the bells come in. And I wish everybody and all the subscribers and contributors, we thank you very much for them. We try and read them out, as we say, every day. But hope you all have a happy and prosperous new year. And same to yourself, Alison. Thanks for your contribution.
Thanks, and all the best when it comes.